What up? Welcome to Homegrown Hustle, where local brilliance takes the center stage. I'm your host, Matt Eickman. Together, we're about to embark on an inspiring journey. Our community thrives on the wisdom of insightful leaders that are right here in our backyard. And we're bringing their expertise to your ears. Whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur or simply seeking inspiration, this podcast is your guide. Join us every week in celebrating innovation, guidance, and the power to inspire greatness. Let's explore the stories that shape our local business landscape, and together, let's ignite the spark of excellence. What's up, everybody? Matt Eickman. I'm here with the CEO of Twin Cities Heating, Air, and Electric, Mr. Wymond Wong. This man is well known throughout the Twin Cities community. He comes to the savior a lot like we do for a lot of our customers when it's an oh shit scenario typically. So Wymond, you've been in business since 2002, right? Tell everybody a little bit about yourself and kind of what got you here to this point.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I went to school for heating HVAC school back in the mid 80s. Then I worked in the restaurant business for a while in a family business. My dad owned a small little chow mein house down in 14th and Nicollet, right in downtown Minneapolis. And then in about 2003, I started with a small little company. Maybe you've heard of them, Centerpoint Energy Minigasco.
Yeah, I think I've heard of them.
I was a service tech for them for about 8 years or so, 9 years. And I decided, man, if I don't do something on my own, because I think I grew up in the restaurant business. My dad owned a business. So I thought if I didn't start a business myself, I would probably never have that opportunity. And Minigasco, Centerpoint was great. They gave me a lot of training, and, I would never say it's a good company. It's just something that I knew inside of me that I wanted to do at some point in my life.
So is that something that there's like an expectation that your family had for you, or you just knew to create additional opportunity for myself and my family, I needed to create some autonomy?
Yeah, I think that's the way it was started. I mean, I could, being a business owner, and you control your destiny as opposed to, yes, can you move up
the corporate ladder?
Yes, can you make more money becoming a better service tech, or, creating more money for Centerpoint at that time, right? And it wasn't something that I could completely control, but having a growing family at that point and being able to control
makes you want to take things into your own hands, right?
Exactly.
So was it easy?
No, it wasn't actually. I had at that point when I left Centerpoint, I had 3 boys under the age of 6, right? And
okay, so that's a big jump.
Exactly. And it was a lot of work. Pulled some retirement money out. It probably did create my first marriage, probably was part of the issue of having that, right? So I suggest if anybody decides to go into business, they really should be on the same playing page with their spouse. It's a huge commitment on both ends. My ex-wife did a wonderful job with the kids, but I think there's a connection that gets lost there because you are so committed to making sure that you can create a business that can thrive. Yeah. At that point.
I mean, most entrepreneurs that I know that like hyper focus and like dedication and like it does take a lot of energy, and it's really easy to like get out of, I don't know if balance is the right word, but get out of balance and forget like, hey, these relationships that are so normal and integral to my life, like they need energy too. That's something I try to bring a lot of focus to. I've got a growing family right now, and like just being able to like zoom out from what you're doing day to day to just see like how you spend your time. It's a really valuable thing. I don't know if that's something you've had to do like in hindsight, but one of the bigger things I've learned over time is like everyone has time, like technically the same amount of time in a week. It's just like, how do you want to use it? And then deciding that. Do you have any practice like that?
Yeah. If I could told myself, my 30-year-old self, how to handle it, and I think work time balance is not like the best way to describe it. The practice that I've been using more now is like work time focus, right? Like we think we spend time with our family, but mentally you're still checked out with, with the business, right? Or even if you're checked out, like you're at a game. One of my down times is I'll go to a Saints game or a baseball game, right? But I'm using some of that energy to focus on, what am I going to do with the business? And in reality, are you really re-energizing, recharging yourself? No, probably not. I think instead of work-life balance, it's work-life focus. So like if you're having date night with your wife, your focus should be with your wife, right? Like even if it's just an hour of time, that 100% of that hour should be really focused on your relationship with her rather than like, and I'm still guilty of it. Like I'll start going, honey, if I could do this in my part of the business, man, would that work out better, right? And now I'm really taking that focus away from there rather than, and balance, right? I think I'm working on that more. Like
that's good. That's something I spent a lot of time thinking about, really. That was kind of punny, but like everyone has the same amount of time, but like managing time is like the value that brings. Like you actually can't manage time. Like it happens. It just exists and we're part of it. But the focus that we have, like that's what we actually have control of when we're talking control. So the intent behind what you do, I think focus is greater than time. Nice. I think focus is greater than time because like you can control it and manage it. It's just like the ability to like really put thought into how you think, like the metacognition of it. Like it's not like you just naturally think about that. Like things have to be going wrong or you have to be working on building something to even get to that depth of thought. But that's what you got to do as an entrepreneur is to continue to grow, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, and you've gone through some stuff. So 2002, you had a partner.
2002, I started. 2008, I ended up getting a business partner due to the fact that I probably was a service tech at heart at that time and thinking I could be a business owner, an entrepreneur, but there's so many little nuances about being a business owner. And you've been there, or if you've been at the beginning, like you see a company, like when I worked for Centerpoint, right? You see them charging so much money for something, but you don't really consider like insurance on your truck, your future, like 401k.
And the depth of understanding about the business itself is just very siloed, right? Because like your day-to-day existence in the business is just like my customers I go to, what I do, what I charge them. Like you skip over a lot of things and just like do some rough math and they're like, oh, they're making a bunch of money.
Exactly. I still remember doing my first job. I think I sold them a repair, right? And I made $50 and I'm like, woohoo, $50, I'm rich. The company's well on its way. But let's say I only run like 2 jobs that day for $50. I made $100, right? That's pretty much $12 an hour.
It's not ideal. Yeah.
And that's without any other expenses. So I think that's
but you've been able to like hit some plateaus and grow through like partnership. You've gone through that like business growth and then like split. And then we were talking earlier and you had mentioned in 2016, something kind of just clicked.
Yeah. So that's an interesting thing because as you're going along and you're processing things. So going back to when I failed kind of my first time around up to 2008, after that, I worked for somebody else for a short time for a company and met my business partner at that point. And one of the things I was scared of was looking at the financials of the company. And as you know, financials are so important with the company. But then I always had that in my mind, like, what do you need to financials for? A scoreboard, right? For your company. If you're not making money, right? Why do you need a scoreboard if you ain't scoring runs, right? So that was always the focus. But as you've gone through the process, you start realizing, like, how do you keep moving forward with making sure that you're keeping an eye on the right things. And at that point, I'm still learning, right, with a business partner. And I did not keep my eye on the financials. Whether it's good or bad, it just was, I always feel like. And that's what created a separation between me and my ex-business partner. And at that point, that's where something clicked, where like I had to make a decision.
You were forced into full control.
Yeah, almost. Either a full control, or do I just go back and work at a company like Centerpoint again, or another company? And at that time I had all my master's licenses, so I can work for almost any company I wanted, because they need masters on staff to be able to pull permits. And I was pretty close to saying, I think I'm just going to go work for somebody. But on the other hand, the craziness of it was, because of that whole situation, my thought process went to, do I just have a company to just own a job? In
that moment, you're saying you got to that type of thinking about it?
Well, over the last 2 years before our split, I felt like, do I just really have a company to have a job?
Am I going to be doing this forever?
Right. And some people like it. I mean, we know there's one-man shops out there, or one person that just does it, and they're very happy. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's just something that I just never saw myself as going, oh my gosh, I'm creating something. And something actually just kind of happened 2 years after that, because the drive at that point, splitting up with my business partner, was just a lot of anger and almost like saying, I'll show him.
Okay.
And it's
so
probably
a new motivator that wasn't there before?
Yeah, that was probably one of the motivators. And so should I go work for somebody else? Well, no, I still have a dream of having my own business, I think was the biggest part of it, right? And then if you go, oh my gosh, I want to show him. It's almost like the emotional part of it wasn't a good driver. It was probably a good jump start to the drive. But after about a year and a half, 2 years of that anger just doesn't bode well anymore, right?
Yeah.
Like, is that the reason why you're really doing this? Yes.
Well, so let me ask you this. Is it like, if it was just you proving it to yourself, would you have been motivated the same way?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I guess it could possibly, but I think at that moment, that was
there was more energy for whatever, like resentment or whatever it might have been that you had towards that interaction. And now you can channel it into something that helps you.
Yeah.
Do you think maybe it was just like mentally it was easier for you to process it that way and like have the passion behind it to get it through some of those early years?
I think you're right, Matt. There's, neuroscience is so interesting, right? Like the neuroencoding of our brain, how we think gets to be like that, right? And you're probably right. There was something a little bit behind me that said, I got to prove it to myself.
It's like mind games, man.
Yes.
Mind games.
But mentally, I think I was like, oh, I'll show him. I'll stick it to him, right? And after a while, that can get really wasted energy.
Can tear at you, right?
Yeah. Because is it really why I'm doing this? And I think at one point I started thinking, actually I had a business coach that started to rethink it, because I had plateaued in my business. I felt like I wasn't increasing the business anymore. I wasn't getting any better. So what am I doing wrong here?
Or maybe you were just looking at the financials now and you had like you knew what I'm just playing. So I lost my pen here, but okay. So let's go back to the business coach. What was it, the plateau that prompted like search for a business coach?
Actually, no. The prompting of the business coach really was when we split when it's in between by your leg there.
Oh, nice. Good looking out, Wymond.
Thank goodness for editing, right?
That's probably going to make it onto the thing still.
Yeah, I think where we're at. I don't know. You asked the question.
I was finding my pen, Wymond. Keep up here.
The pivoting, going from my business coach. You were asking about business coach. When did I get a business coach?
All right. I got my pen. Know where it is. Let's get back to it.
So I'll start from so after that question.
What prompted the business coach?
Yes. So the business coach kind of came in right when I was having trouble with my business partner. And it was not quite him working with both of us. It was just me talking with him through my struggles, right? And I think business coaches are a great thing to have. I would highly recommend everybody get a business coach. One of the things that I think people mistakenly do is they get the business coach at the wrong time. Like if things are going really well in your business, like you're just like, why do I need a business coach, right? Like
that's the best time to get one. You throw some gas on the fire.
Exactly. When more people look for a business coach when they already are deep into whatever problem they're having. And it really isn't about, I think a good fit for a business coach is not the business coach that really goes, okay, we're going to look at your numbers and this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. I think a good business coach, and this is just my opinion, can work the stuff between your ears, like the setbacks that you have between your ears.
The mind games. So now you need someone to play mind games on you.
Yes, because I feel like, God rest his soul, my dad, fantastic man. I really admire what he did in the restaurant business. He never grew it, but he was one of those that worked hard and just stayed consistent. But one of the things that he had always told me growing up was like, you know, if you think about it, it's going to make $1 million. Somebody's already thought about it and done it, right? He didn't do it maliciously to like hurt me. He did it to protect my feelings, right? He didn't want me to get hurt with ideas, but that also put a limitation to how I looked at things.
Mindset.
Yeah. And I feel like, and again, it's not an intention that he had to say, hey, you know, don't get too big on yourself, or don't start thinking of crazy ideas, right? And sometimes I'll think about that, and like how some people are so angry at things, right? And when we talk about goals and dreams and stuff like that, and some people get angry at people for not making their own dreams and goals, and they're just angry. You can just feel it from them, right? And I always think to myself, or I think I've had a conversation like, you know, it's because maybe their parents told them that they were average and that they had to work harder, that they were nothing special. That's who, you know, that in this world, trigger. That's the trigger, right? Like that's where, and how do you prevent that from happening? Because I've been guilty of it, probably saying it to my own kids, right? Like work harder, you know what I mean? To get to where you're at. And funny, my son is sitting in the room right now with us listening to this conversation. But I think as parents, we just want them to be able to do better than what we did, right? So I apologize to all my kids that I've said some stupid stuff to. It was never intentional.
Yeah, but I think a little bit of it is like, I don't know, when you have the success you do and you have kids, like you're creating opportunities that you never had with intent, right? But there's also like, you don't want to give too much, and now you're entitling kids and making it so easy on them that they don't even realize their potential, right? Because now we're just the easy button. That's something I bring a lot of attention to, and like challenging them. You got to challenge your kids, especially like if you have success. Like I think working hard and like being told like, hey, go the extra mile. Like some of that, we got to program them, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
But it's got to come with love. And I mean, I know you got a lot of love, Wymond. So I assume your kids probably already know that, but we'll make sure that they hear this podcast as well.
And you know, sometimes you always question yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but we're learning too as parents, right? We're not perfect.
No.
And we're not perfect in business. We're not perfect as spouses or as fathers. But if you're always learning and pivoting or evolving, then there's space for change, right? If you're always like just A, B, C, like routine, and there's never any change, like, you know what the outcome's going to be. So that pivot, I think that's where you open the door for growth.
Right.
There might be failure, and that's why people don't pivot. Right. But that, when you do that, now you can move and grow. And I know you've pivoted hundreds of times over the course of growing your business. Right. So let's get back to the business coach. All right, timeline here. So business coach, like what was your search for?
Yeah, that's
like what was the process you went through?
When I was going through that trouble with my business partner, I started talking to another business coach. I did look at business coaches in the past and said, what are they going to tell me what I don't already know about my own business, right? And like I said, they're working between the ears is a huge part, and you got to click with a good business coach. And what I came to find out and learn about myself was, the anger was holding myself back to get to that next level, because it can only work you so far. What is it that you can contribute? What is it that drives you? And one of the things that back then I was probably thinking more of, how do I develop a company, and what is it really in it for me to develop that company? What's the Nero encoding for me?
Yeah, what's my day-to-day look like even as you grow?
Right. And the day-to-day is different from like your bigger goal, right? Like you're getting caught up in the fires and stuff like that. And it gets hard and exhausting. But if you can remember what your actual reason why you do, your why, right? Start with your why, Simon Sinek.
But you had to like go through that because you identified that this anger isn't enough passion to carry me through.
Exactly. So as we started having in-depth, I would say therapy.
Unlicensed therapy.
Unlicensed therapy. I think it was really finding out, like, why am I really doing this? And in all reality, my biggest why is like thinking about my deathbed, thinking about my finality to everything, right? Am I ever going to be on my deathbed going, oh my gosh, if I could have made $40,000 more for the company in 2021 during the pandemic, how much better off would I be on this deathbed right now? I don't think I'd ever say that. But I know I'd be saying something like, man, I'm no longer with the company, but they now employ 90 team members, and they're taking good care of their family. They all have a good 401k. They all have health plans. I've done something to move something forward, even if it was just that little bit, right? It's not a lot, but it's my lot, right?
Yeah, that's a tough process to have to go through. But I mean, I think in business, if you don't act, like whether it's consciously or subconsciously, if you're trying to grow your business, like every day we wake up and we get smacked in the face with something, right? And every day you got to keep going if that business is going to grow and be successful. So like there has to be something that's like something more that's more important. Otherwise, like if you quit, if you stop, like that can become a habit really easily. And then you just don't keep going through it.
I like to use the words of my business coach, Stephen Crawford, and he wrote a book that was called Too Stupid to Fail, right? And that's kind of like somewhat like that, right? You get punched in the face and you're like,
just like Rocky, just like keeps going. Yeah.
I'm too stupid not to stay down, right? And sometimes if you keep doing that, it gets you somewhere. Your brain might not be marshmallow after that process, but it still works.
So the Stephen Crawford guy, how'd you go about finding him?
So he was in a networking group with me, and we just became friends. And then once we started becoming friends and me talking to him about some of the things that were on my mind, he kind of helped me work through some of those processes. And then he took me on as a client after I got through that process, which was really huge because I did talk to other business coaches before. And that's where I kind of learned you got to find one that clicks with you. And I like Steven a lot. He's been a great business coach, but I think people have to find their own ones that they connect with, right? Like guys like, I think one of the best quarterbacks in, going to football is Tom Brady, right? And his coach, I think, was huge for him, Belichick, right? But they had a connection. It wasn't always, as much as we think it was about football, they had to have respect for one another and be able to work through some of that stuff. And of course, Tom Brady isn't going to see everything on the field. He's in the middle of the storm, right? And Belichick, his coach, actually sees what's around him and helps him.
Yeah. It gives him more information and guidance.
Yes.
Sometimes, so the business coaches I've worked with, like they ask questions, right? And like an outside opinion, like someone who's not in the day to day, because in day to day, we can just get so like zoomed in and focused on this thing right in front of you that you forget where you're spending your time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a big part of it, is just making sure that you're focusing on the right, going back to what we talked about, being intentional, right? Like, I don't know about you, Matt, but and you've talked to a lot of business owners, me too. We all have ADD. We're like, ooh, shiny, and we'll start chasing another item, right? And I think a good business coach can help you stay focused and intentional. Like, this is what got you here. How do we keep focusing on that? And there's nothing wrong with doing that.
It's like those things that move the needle, though, right? Because like we could focus on whatever, dude. I could go, like, I remember when I first like got out of the truck, I went through and I literally looked at like everything we spent money on from the previous year, and I like I processed it. I don't think it was valuable. It kind of just pissed me off a little bit. But like sometimes you don't really know like what's helpful. Like what's the thing that's gonna grow this business the most? We want to deliver a high level of customer service. So maybe let me ask you this. Do you recall the moment when you went from being the guy in the truck to like stepping out of the truck and not going and doing service?
Wow, that is a really good question. I haven't thought about this in a while. And you've probably been there too. At some point in 2016, when I was pivoting out, and I've just my business partner go, it all starts from scratch again, right? Like I'm the guy that has to answer the phones, and that's what I did before anyways. But there was a moment where like, man, you got to let the people do what they do best, right? Like you can't be good at everything in your company. And especially when you're just a one-man shop, you have to sweep the trucks, you have to order the parts, you have to have the job set up, you have to.
And you don't do half the shit anyways.
Yeah, exactly. But going back to your question, like that stepping out of that truck, I think it's in baby steps, right? Like you start thinking like,
I ripped the Band-Aid off, man.
Did you?
Keep going though.
It was that first hire was an office person to just answer the phones, right? Like, but I think mentally I'm telling myself, why would I want to pay somebody $10 an hour to answer the phone? I suppose I'm dating myself. $10 an hour is nothing now, but when I can do it myself and I can do it better and I know exactly what my customer wants to hear, right?
That's the ego.
And that is the ego in us, isn't it? And I hate to admit this, I have an ego. All us business owners have an ego.
You just have to be able to direct it. I think egos are good.
Yeah.
I really do. It's just when you don't have control or even like the awareness of that ego, that's when that becomes the limitation for you. But having a good ego is what allows people the confidence to be able to go and do shit that people are like, bro, why are you doing that?
Right.
But sometimes that's like innovation.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I know this is crazy sometimes when I look at hiring a manager where we're at now, when we're hiring managers and stuff and supervisors in our position, I want them to have an ego because that's the way they move the ball forward. I don't want somebody that's leading my team going,
wishy-washy. Well, they're not. I mean? Well, it's difficult. It's difficult to develop that in somebody, right? Because it's really like it's internal confidence and belief. So unless there's something that they've overcome or achieved in their past, they have to do it on the clock, right? And then you have to help build that ego for them. Like you got to tell them, hey, I know you can do this. And they're like, no. But then you say, go do it. Then they do it. And you're like, see, told you. It's like with your kids almost, right?
Right.
But as you're growing, like it's hard to be able to like step out of the truck. So you went baby steps, you said.
I did more or less like, and there's a balance of micromanaging those baby steps too, right? Because
I know exactly what you're talking about.
So once you get off the phone and you start realizing, oh yeah, that has been so much more productive use of my time rather than me answering the phone.
It's like a light bulb.
Yes.
Like what else can I find?
And actually do the things you're good at, right? And at that time, it was me doing the service work. So then I started hiring an installer. Like I would do the installs before when we were, and the service work, but
And then you went to sales.
Yes. And I was pretty good at sales at that time, obviously to develop the company. But eventually I had to put a sales guy and a sales manager in that position.
And is that when you stopped going and seeing customers?
Yes and no. I still saw my customers that I really wanted to make sure I connected with, And usually the ones that talk a lot and really, I feel like you always have to keep in touch with your biggest fans, right? Like if they're the big fans of your company and they're like loud talkers, you better get out there and connect with them on a consistent basis, because they're the ones that's going to drive your company. And that's what
cheerleaders,
truly what I'm doing more of this day and age. Like, yes, I'm CEO of the company. I do oversee the financials when that happens, but I have somebody else handling that part of it. I think the biggest thing that I have to learn about growing is you got to put the trust in your team behind you, because I'll tell you what, I never want to hire somebody that's not, that I'm smarter than or that I'm better at it than them. Because and that goes back to ego, right? You think that you're better than them, but you got to look for somebody that's better than you and then be able to trust, but consistently verify. I think that's what most CEOs or business people have to do at a high level.
And I think it's something that, like, right, what you just said right there is the thing that holds people back, and why a lot of people never do what you've done or what I've been able to accomplish and go through those iterations of Wymond Wong as a technician, Wymond Wong as the salesperson, Wymond Wong as the kind of COO, kind of CEO, but mostly you're just like doing like those iterations are hard to go through, man, because you don't trust, like if you don't trust people, all the stuff you're trying to backfill, all those tasks that really you shouldn't be focusing on or spending time on, you're going to overanalyze everybody. You're going to go home upset at the end of the day. They're going to freaking hate working for you. And then you got to go back and do the shit anyway.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
So like some of it you have to really like identify, okay, here's my skill sets. This is what I'm going to do. And if they can't do it at 100% of what I'm going to do, that's okay. Like 70 to 80% would be okay. Because if you're wanting them to do it exactly how you would, and you want them to have your skill set, like they would be a business owner. So it's not fair to have that expectation of them. Like that was kind of the thought process I had to go through, because I wanted to help people grow, but I sucked at teaching, and I sucked at like allowing them to like make decisions and learn. And when they did, I just told them how wrong it was. Like, it was like really, or like, hey, you should have done this or this. But in reality, like it's done. And if you're going to grow a business, decisions have to get made at an accelerated rate in order for that business to continue to grow. And the only way that happens is if they know, hey, this is a decision I can make. Wymond trusts me to do this. It's part of my job. I trust myself to do this. The decision's made.
Right.
That's how businesses grow.
Yeah.
And trust, like it's not, I don't know. I feel like it gets thrown around a little bit, but like you actually have to put energy into your team to be able to cultivate that. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree 100% actually. And I think sometimes, we can all have different definitions of trust at the end of the day. Just because I trust you to run the department doesn't mean we can't constantly learn, right? And when I criticize something that you did, it doesn't mean that I trust you. It's that let's learn this process together and how to get better. Yes.
Yeah. So that like people coming to grips with their ego, really, right?
Yeah.
And allowing you to do your job as a coach, because that's really what our job is as the heads of the company. As we're growing, like we need to support everybody. Right. So, but if the support I need to provide you pisses your ego off, well, then this is going to be a tough relationship for us anyway. Right. But that's hard to be able to go through that. Did you have to kind of learn some things the hard way as you were growing with employees and the new roles being created? Yeah,
I actually did. And I think when you start learning more about yourself, one of the things that I think you've read or looked at is like DISC assessments, right? How to work with other people. And, and you're young, you don't always know how to work with other people because your ego gets in the way, right? There's an ego. And actually, a good example is my controller, right now. She's been with me from the beginning almost, right? And like, I think 1 month after I revamped, a couple months after I revamped, she's one that's detailed, very detailed. Like she needs things in a box, like everything should be explained, right? And why she's doing it, right? And I'm a very undetailed person. Just give me
make it happen.
I'm a big picture person. And so I remember, and she brought this out at our last, we had an 8-year anniversary celebration. 8's a big number for me. I love 8. I don't know what it is, my lucky number, but we had a special 8-year anniversary. She brought out a notebook on the first year that she was working here, and her notebook just had notes and notes of stuff, right? And her story is that I'd walk into the office because I was still out in the field lot. I made sure she was there at 8 in the morning, and I would come in and I would spit out like 20 things at her. This, got to get this done. This got to get done. This got to get done. And she's writing down as fast as she can, right? And we just had started working together. And of course, I'm the owner. So it's like, you don't want to question the owner because I don't want to lose my job. I kind of like it. But she's going, oh my God, how am I going to get all this done? And he didn't give me much details, right? And there was a moment a few times where I can tell she was really frustrated throughout in that period, right? And this was when I wasn't learning to be more of a leader and reading the books. Like, you have to understand people. And I'm just like, well, why can't you get it done? And she's looking at me going, why is he not detailed? How can I do my job if I don't know exactly what he wants done, right? So at some time in between there, and even still learning today, I have to sit and, again, I've said this, I like to talk just to hear myself talk sometimes, so I tend to overtalk people. But I had to really work hard at going, okay, what is she trying to tell me? What is she asking me? And how do I get her those full details that she needs to do her job at a high level? Now, this is somebody that I hired at the beginning to answer phones. And she was the one that, she was working as a bank as a teller. Now she's our controller, and she's right up there at the CFO position that we have. That she does a lot of that. That's from growth.
I mean, and that's like what being part of a growing small business allows, like, loyal team members, right? So, like, I call them members of our team. Like, they're our team. They're not my employees. They're our team, because we are a team. And people being part of a team, like, if you're there from the early on, you can, like, put up with all that shit that goes through the constant evolutions, and this is how we do it now. And then, like, in 6 months, it's done that way. And then it's just like all the change, like, that's overwhelming for somebody that's just trying to make some money and provide for their family. So the trust that's developed over that time, though, it's like almost unbreakable, because there's a lot of stress early on. Yes. Right. But now, like, there's probably I bet you don't even know what time that lady gets to work anymore. You said 8 o'clock before. Does she still get to work at 8?
She actually does. She's actually really
consistency too.
She's very consistent. But again, it's different personalities, right? Like, she's a very detailed person. So she loves, like, exact routines, right? Like 8 o'clock. Nice. And I noticed that. And I think to be a good controller, or people that are handling your money, you want them, like, right on time with stuff, right? Like, she has it marked on her calendar. This is the day I reconcile. This is the day that...
These are the days,
Yeah, so, and for me, guys like me, and I don't know about you, but I'm like, ooh, that's on my schedule. Ooh, I can change that. I would rather do this, right? Yeah. Like, we wing things, right, sometimes.
Shit. That's why I got an assistant in charge of my schedule now, because then I don't put 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag. You know what I mean? Because but in my mind, as I'm going through it, especially early on when I was taking phone calls and scheduling services, like, I would have, like, an ungodly amount of stuff, but, like, I was just trying to get after it and, like, drive revenue. So yeah, I could do that. I could add that. And then, like, I'm looking at, like, when you zoom out, there's no way, like, and now you're letting people down. Right. But when you're moving so fast and you have the 20,000 things that you dump on somebody's desk in the morning, like, that's what it's like growing a business. Not everybody can go through that and will go through that. People usually give up. Yeah. Because they don't have something that moves them through that and carries them through it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And funny you mentioned the assistant. You and I think have done all, because I think at one point, both of us, or at least me, were like, what do I need an assistant for? I can handle my own schedule. I don't need people telling me what to do. But once you get over that point and you figure that piece out, the assistant's been so helpful with just like, even just sifting through emails, right? Like, just get rid of the junk that's not important.
Well, and
right?
like the bandwidth it creates, because like when you're probably in the same role, like when you're at the CEO level and you're still a part of a growing company, like you need to be able to use a lot of brain energy to think about stuff, right? And you need time to do that. And if you're thinking of juggling all this other stuff, it's hard to just like think.
Yeah.
Like sometimes just having time to think is like, that's part of what it means to grow a business. Because how else do you create strategy? How else do you like develop a plan if you're not like creating that type of space? And if you have decision, all these different choices you have to make throughout the day, that like decreases your brain's ability. Like it really does. Like, bro,
for sure.
I remember like my expectation for how many emails I allowed myself to have in my inbox, it like slowly went down. Like I remember it was like wild at first, like thousands, like it's spam, and like I didn't want to lose anything. I was like, screw that, select all, delete. If it's that important, like they'll get back to me. It's just like some stupid stuff. But then it went from that to, all right, 100. If I keep it below 100, I'm good. And I was like, what the hell? What kind of business owner am I? 100 emails? Like, we got to get this lower. So I was like, all right, 20. Let's move it there. And then I was like, you know what? If I really want to be the best version of a business owner, I want an instant response to every single email that I get.
Right.
But I can't, like, I physically can't do that.
Yeah.
Unless I'm only sitting there waiting for people to like throw shit at me. So like, that's really like what prompted the assistant for me. And it's just created a lot of additional space to be able to create and like continue to create those opportunities for employees and make like big decisions.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And I don't know if it's the same thing. I've the book, Buy Back Your Time.
Bro.
Best thing
Dan
ever.
Martell.
Yes.
I love it. It's one of my favorite books. Real easy read too, but like I run those tools all day with my team. Like we've got daily syncs. Like, bro, I love them so much. Like, I don't know when I looked at my email last, but it's getting looked at and everything gets handled. And I talk about everything every day, but somebody who has more focus to dedicate to doing that at the level I want it to be done, like they do it because they do it better.
Yeah.
Right.
We need to have a little more conversation on that, maybe off the side, because I'm still looking at emails, but it's down to my goal is just keep about 10 to 20 emails on me that I have to look at. Right. That's what I told my assistant, but what happens is like the one thing that I did notice before that was the worst thing is like, again, I think we all have ADD, especially business owners, right? Ooh, shiny, right? And all of a sudden something pops up like Minnesota Wild trade for whoever, right? Like, ooh, I got to read that article, right? Because you got ADD and you start going down that rabbit hole.
Well, and being able to see like those natural like pathways or like thought processes that you go through and identifying like, hey, when this happens, I usually do that. I don't want that to happen. So I have to change something to make sure that this never happens.
Right.
That takes a lot of time, and it needs to be like responses to stimuli rather than reactions. Because reactions are just like you slip on ice and you catch yourself type of thing. Like there's no thought behind that. But that little space between where there's a stimulus and then like whatever happens next, like that's where human cognition like comes into play. But you have to think about it before you're in that little millisecond for there to be true thought and response to the stimuli. Does that make sense? I got really freaking deep right there. I'm sorry.
No, actually, with you getting deep, here's the deal too. It's like sometimes you go on some podcasts or you read a book, right? Like, what's the $1,000 nugget that I pulled out of this, or $10,000? This was my $10,000 nugget from you, man. Dude.
I got lots of nugs.
I got value today.
Hell yeah. We're all about bringing value.
Love it.
So are you still growing your business right now?
I am. We're still doing, it hasn't been the best years for us. And I think part of it might be weather driven. Obviously, heating and air is a little more weather driven.
I feel your pain.
Right. I think in the pest control area too.
I mean, that triggers everything. Like they've got like built-in thermometers. Yeah. Like I know when it's box elder season, and that's coming up here pretty soon.
And I'm sure the tow truck drivers, they depend on seasonal work. Like if it doesn't snow a lot, they're like, man, where's the business coming from? Nobody's crashing cars.
Well, being able to drive the activities of your employees, like independent of the weather, like you still got to be able to make sure that these people who are committing to your business and the growth of your business, but also like they got a livelihood, right? So they're putting a little bit of skin in the game. So that's our obligation as a business owner to ensure that we can continue to employ them, and not only employ them, but do more than that and like create growth opportunity for them.
Yes.
And it's hard when, the weather. Yeah. Like if you stop thinking at, the weather, then you're not going to grow your company.
I strongly believe 100%. You cannot blame everything on the circumstances. There's something that you can do to create some of that, right? Whether it's even, yes, it does have a little factor in it, but if you blame it 100% on that,
it's also,
you can't fix it.
But it's also kind of predictable. Like, like last year, winter kind of threw us all for a loop, but if you live in the Midwest, you kind of sort of know it's about to snow. Yeah. It's going to be cold.
Yeah.
Right. So if the fact that time is elapsing and now we're in this point where it's cold, like if your business stops then and you can't continue to find ways to grow, like it's tough up here. That's why there's not a lot of pest control companies.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, and there's so many factors, challenging factors, outside factors and internal factors, right? That those challenges, internal and external challenges, right? That I'm learning about. I'm looking at my son because he's working, helping us work a marketing strategy and the challenges. And I always think of external challenges, right? And he kind of said internal challenges too. That's what we have to look at. And it's interesting because some of the external challenges, if you don't look at your internal challenges, the external challenges just get more glaring, right? So if you can take care of some of your internal challenges, that smooths stuff out. One of the things that we've done is, because of external challenges, what do you have to do to not let those external challenges become more of a problem, right? Because you don't want to depend on that.
Correct.
And like we're talking about external weather, things like that, and that we depend on that, right? So a few years back, we had brought in electrical. Some of it, dumb luck, thinking that part of it is...
That's a big part of business too.
Right. And then going into it the same way, like knowing that bringing in an electrical department is going to cost us an expense because you got to set up the truck, you got to bring in a master electrician. There's a big expense to that. And talking from a business owner's point of view, you got to be able to put up with those, or not put up, be able to handle like getting punched in the face for the next year, knowing that you're going to take a beating on setting up a new department or setting up a new product, right?
And the timeline you give yourself and the expectations along the way. I think with something like adding a service line, like you're talking about, it's, unless you get lucky, like it's really important to set the expectation there. Like we added wildlife to our services, and that was, the first year was great, right? Because we were small and it added a lot of revenue. But like as soon as we tried to grow it, this is not the same business as pest control. Like they're kind of together, but it was hard, like very hard. It was one of the hardest years we've ever had in business, really. But if you give up there, like then you don't learn those things you have to learn to be able to get to the next level because you just stop.
Yeah.
Did you have to go through some stuff like that too?
Yeah, we did actually. And I know exactly what you're talking about because like you come to a point where you're like, oh man, I'm just losing so much money on that part of it. And what if I just go back to the basics and just make my money, right?
Wouldn't it be easier?
It would be easier. But then I think it's almost like playing poker, right? You start putting money out, dollar after dollar, and all my poker buddies will learn my my face now sometimes.
Yeah.
But you put in dollar after dollar, right? And you're like, I got too much money into this to drop out now, right?
Yeah.
I need to stick with it to see that last card.
It's actually a psychological bias. It's a sunken costs bias.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. So it's like, oh man, but once you get through that, whether you win or lose, if you lose, you're like, ooh, okay, now I know what to do next time or as we move forward, right? So why am I going to stop doing it now? Because I've already paid the price of education.
Yeah. Right? I gotcha. Now you're invested.
Exactly. So I think there is that with doing that. And then the kind of the luck that we had with electrical was we've really been pushing it. So we're finding that we did that 3 years ago. And then this year it's kind of helped out, smooth out some of the downturn we've had with the heating and air side due to the weather.
It's a different revenue stream. Like it's associated with your other business, but it's not driven by snow or driven by heat. It's,
right.
Can you sell it?
Yes, exactly. And the one thing that we want to pride ourselves on is how do we find the needs of the customer, right? What the customer really needs, our homeowners need. And once we started figuring out the electrical part, and I don't have it completely down yet, but we have that little moment like, okay, electric really kind of helped us through some of the downtime for the heating and air, because like
you're talking cross-selling.
Cross-selling to a certain extent, yes, but how do we develop another part of our company that could bring in a different line of product, right? That can still do what we need to do. So water systems, water treatment, water softeners is the next thing that we've been doing the last 6 months to a year trying to put that in place.
So going through these different service lines, are you then taking these new services you offer, going back to the customers you've provided other services for and saying, hey, you did business with us once before. If you ever have a need, we do these?
Yes, absolutely. And if they like our heating and air service, obviously they would like our plumbing service, whether it's the same or not.
Well, it's really like the consumer's propensity. Let me say this word better. Propensity to, let's start over. It's the customer's propensity to purchase from you. Right. If they've done it once before, the overall stats say, hey, there's a high likelihood if we present them with another service and they have a need, they're going to purchase it from us because they've already developed that trust. Yeah. So if we're talking about fishing in a smaller pond, like that's where residential services miss. They don't just pick the phone up and say, oh, hey, by the way, we do electrical and thanks for your business. How's the air conditioner doing?
Right.
So
how the challenge with that was how do you get them to know that that's what you do, right? Like
bro, I just told you. Here's that moment you've been looking for. You go to all your customers that you've done for the last 20 minutes. You find one of them. You pick the phone up. You call them. You say, hey, it's Wymond, Twin Cities Heating and Air. I know I was out at your house like 15 years ago. Just wanted to let you know we're also doing these things, still part of the community. If there's anything we could do, just let us know.
I like that. And that's where we're like, and it's really simple. That's the beauty of it. And I think the difference that happens in our mind shifts. So it's rethinking, right? Like some of my mindset right now is like, I don't touch customers like I once did, right? Like when we talked about getting out of the truck, right? Yeah. But now it's as simple as getting back to that basics and okay, I'm kind of getting back in the truck somewhat by going, hey, this is what we offer individually.
Well, and this is what I'm realizing as a CEO, like once you grow your organization to the point where like a lot of the stuff that make it run, like it can run without you, then what do you do with your time? You have to bring value somewhere, right?
Right.
And so some of the best value we can bring to the organization is try to identify, hey, is there a new service line we can bring in that's going to add value with less input? Is there like, does this process work? This idea that I have, like if I try to call them and sell it, does that work? Then if it does work, now I know what to expect from somebody in that role. And they know that it's doable.
I like that. Yeah.
Because right now in your organization, if you asked your CSR to pick the phone up and probably call your customers from last year, 5 years ago, they're probably going to tell you it's not going to work.
Right.
Until you prove to them that it does work. And it's really just a matter of inputs. Eventually the output's going to be there. But the biggest problem sounds like to me is if you're trying to add these additional service lines, like how do the people that already love the heck out of us, how do they even know that we do it?
Right.
We got to tell them. That's what you have to do. Like we can't or else we spend additional marketing dollars to get to the same customers that we've already spent money on.
And we think email always works. We always think that, or, just hammer it out there with like media marketing. I think you're right. I in case I'm counting right now, like I figured you gave me $10,000 worth of nugget on that other one.
That's
another 10.
Hell no, bro. So that's $1 million idea. What you talking about?
That's right. That's
big. I mean, you've been in business long enough, man. All it takes is the inputs. And when it comes down to continuing to grow, the inputs in a service-based business that I've seen are sales. Because you don't really need the service until the sales happen. So how do you get the sales? Well, you need opportunities or you need leads. Right. Where do those leads come from? Well, we spend a lot of our time on marketing, driving new business, right? But most businesses never do this, Wymond. Most businesses never even email their previous customers. Their previous customers next year or 5 years down the line, they got to pay Google again to get them because they don't they lose it. The customer experience dies after that. So those touch points, that's part of a relationship. That's how you stay top of mind.
And we have found from our numbers data that the people that spend the most money with us is our past customers.
Weird.
By far. Yeah.
Weird.
It's not something new and exciting, but yeah, it's so why aren't we capitalizing and how do we capitalize on that more, right? And I think you're right. Having the owner of the company call and actually, hey,
bring some focus to it, right? Because if it's something that does move the needle, and if those service lines have any type of synergy, like pest and wildlife, like there's synergy there. Same thing for you. Like the customer has a home and they have stuff that they might need. They might even need the service you gave them a few years ago again. They just forgot what your name was.
Right.
So part of it is like you have that customer there. It's our obligation to ensure that anything that we offer as a service business, they know like, hey, we can help you. Otherwise, after we do the thing they called us for, why do we even matter?
Right.
We have to find ways to matter.
Right, absolutely.
Hitting you with some fire today, Wymond.
We did. And, going back to that neuroscience thing, the one thing that I think about is like, we get told different things. And I'll leave you with one of these. Like, I've been told, like, in the past, like, the only way you develop a good business, and it's so true. I feel like this is really true, too. Like, a real viable business that really you can actually just walk away from and really have its top knowing that it's working right, is you got to make sure as a leader, you make yourself the most useless person in the company. So when your people are asking like, what does Wymond do around here? He doesn't do anything. What does he really do, right? Now your company is definitely a machine.
Your check's there every week. You know that, right?
Exactly.
Like, it doesn't matter what I'm doing.
But then that fights the balance of like, I'm going to put on my calendar. Once you told me this, I'm going to set some time with my assistant and say, hey, I need this blocked off because I'm going to make personal calls to these past customers that I haven't touched back with in a while, right?
Yeah, and like you and I can dive deeper into that, but really like if you've been fortunate enough and you got the hard work to like get your business through the first 3-5 years, like where most businesses fail, you have a book of business, right? So the cheapest way to get more business is to talk to the people you've already done business with.
All right.
But the home services, commercial services, like the thought doesn't always go there because we're like new leads, the fun ones, the easy ones. That's what we look for rather than, you know what? Thank you so much for helping us get to this point in our business. I just wanted to call you, check in, see how things are going, letting you know our business is growing. And you say thank you for helping us get to where we're at now.
I like that. I think that's really great. And I think one of the industries that don't do that really well, and we see it all the time.
Pest control.
I'm just pest control. No, I was thinking more like the mobile carriers. Like they'll spend lots of money to get new customers, but I feel like they don't really, when you call them up and you say, hey, I got this problem, they don't seem to really pay attention to that. They figure, whatever, if you leave, we'll just find a way to get you back, right? But in all reality, if they can figure out how to go, how do we do better customer retention? I think that's a wheelhouse for more people to really make sure that they're getting their values worth. Because you look at all their ads, they're spending money on getting new customers. Switch now. They're one of those companies that don't do what you just told me to do. Like,
hey man, really most companies don't do that because the fact of the matter is it's not easy. And like the ones where people do a Google search and call and they want you to sell them something, that's an easy one. Right. Like you're just signing them up at that point. Yeah. Like real sales is like relationship development, trust for presentation. Like they got to know what it takes to even do business.
That's a good point. And it's kind of funny. Well, we could get into this conversation quite a bit. Even like we have sales guys that sell equipment, right? And especially right now, it's been hard times.
I would love to talk to your sales guy.
It's been hard times for sales guys, but one of the sales excuses, and
when is your next sales meeting?
It's next week. But one of the things that we've all heard from our sales guys, like at least for me, like, oh, they're just kicking tires, right? And then going back to they're just shopping for a furnace. That
means you didn't build value.
Exactly. And I will tell you right now, my response to that all the time is like, are you kidding me? Nobody just called you up, just have fun to have you come out, right?
Yeah. This is what they wanted to do on a Thursday afternoon.
Exactly. No? We have boring stuff. They're not just kicking tires. They're about to buy. And they're just saying, I want to buy probably within the next month. I'm just not buying from you. That's what they're telling you when they say, I'm just shopping.
I don't see the value. Right? You haven't presented me with an offer I can't say no to.
Yes. And then on top of that, when you go into the other sales where they start making excuses like, and there is some validity to it, right? People aren't buying because it's not cold enough right now, or it's not warm enough, right?
Or you're not doing your follow-up calls.
Right. But 2 years ago, his numbers were really high. And yes, there is something with the economy that a couple of years ago, people are staying home. So they're willing to pay for that, right?
Yeah, but what's in his control? Is homeboy making his follow-up calls like he did 3 years ago?
Right. That's part of it. But I also believe that you were really good back then. And that's when everybody was buying, right? Because that's when the economy was kind of good. The economy was better 3 years ago. Or people were buying because of the pandemic. They were staying at home more. They were having more. The interest rates were better, so people were able to finance something.
Hey man, people need to buy because my salesman goes to their house.
Right.
That's why.
But I also think the difference is this is a time for you to shine then. So you're saying that any average sales guy can go out there and sell when it's good.
So why do I need you then? I just need somebody to go take an order.
So that's the difference, I think, also.
So let me ask you this. Are your sales people, were they former technicians?
Yes, they were.
So one thing I've seen that mindset that technicians, like, they really enjoy working with their hands, problem solving, that like their personality profile is geared towards delivering a high level of customer service, making sure they're happy and solving the problem. And that's what drives them. And then they want to get on to the next one. Whereas like a personality for a salesperson is like high energy, want to build additional value, like sometimes overpromise, and then you got to figure it out on the back end. Like that ego drives a lot of it, but that personality is the opposite of this one.
Right.
So, and unless there's a process that's developed during that service to make cross sells and part of the natural conversation, it's hard to have them evolve because like that's just who they are.
Yeah. And how do you work with that? And I know like a lot of technicians like to be very knowledgeable. Like that's what they pride themselves on. Right. And I think the combination of having the knowledge and having the connection is what really makes a sale.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, technicians are the best salespeople.
Absolutely.
They are. So over the years, like the coaching I've had to go through with our team and with other companies that I've worked with, it's really around like, hey, if you are a technician, you're providing service, you're obligated to make sure that they're getting the highest level of service, right? So if you believe you're the best, then you need to make sure that customer does business with you. And if you're not doing that, by not talking about these things, you're actually not that good at being a technician. Because if we're the best company out there and we're leaving room for them to potentially do business with somebody else because they just don't know about what we do, or that problem's going to happen in 6 months, now I'm actually doing you a disservice by not talking about these things that might be unrelated. Right. But I don't get to make decisions for the customer as far as what they do or don't want. This is not my home. You know what I mean? Right. So that type of thought process and shift is really what has to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
For sure.
No, it's a lot of good food for thought here.
Hell yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. So a couple other questions. Anybody that wants to get in contact with you, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
You can email me is always the best, Wymond@twincityheatingnair.com. Assistant always picks it up, and I always try that she gets me the things that needs to be done right away. Otherwise, she'll put some stuff on my task list or some highlight stuff that I need to look at possibly, and I can do it. But that's always the best way. Scheduling, whatever, 763-757-4678 is our main line. And
you guys on social media and everything too?
We do. And if you ask for Wymond, most likely it'll get to one of the my assistant. And it usually, if you just want to talk, I'm good with that about business. I love talking about business. I have no problems with that.
And then, okay. So the last question I ask, so you're on the Homegrown Hustle podcast, right? So one question we ask all of our guests is, what's the word hustle mean to you? Especially in terms of business.
Good question. So when I think of hustle, and it's kind of funny, that was our, how basketball, I know I don't look like a basketball player, but back in the day at 5'8", it's hard to, but my senior year, our basketball team was hustle was our practice shirts, right? Mm-hmm. And what I felt that meant was like, you push every day as hard as you can to be the best you can be. And that's what hustle actually means to me. Like, every day you push yourself till you can't give any more. And it could be just not even just physically, emotionally, right? Like, that's the key to hustle.
I love that. Well, Wymond, thanks for joining us on the Homegrown Hustle. Check out Wymond. I know he's got a podcast in the works too. Twin Cities customers, heating and air, electrical, and water treatment, water softeners. Sounds like they do a lot. So reach out to them directly, follow them on social media. If you could give us a like, share, comment, all that's been really helpful. Keep those questions coming in. We got an episode where we're going to run through some of those questions and I'll answer that. Thanks everybody for listening to the Homegrown Hustle podcast. Wymond, hope you have a great day. Thanks again, man.
Thank you.
Thanks again for joining us on Homegrown Hustle. Our local business community thrives because of the brilliant leaders right here in our backyard. And it's been an absolute privilege to provide them with a platform to share their invaluable expertise. Stay tuned for more insight, wisdom, and inspiration from our local business champions. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Together, we'll continue to nurture and expand our homegrown success stories. Matt Eickman signing off until our next insightful episode.